All right, hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, a slightly sweaty Jonathan Macri, here with you for another KFS lunch break. I just got back from a run, made it into the shower and out and in front of the old laptop in the nick of time. So that's good. Beautiful day outside. Beautiful day for perhaps some NBA activity. I don't know. I keep waiting for there to be more stuff happening in the lead up to tomorrow. But I don't know. It's kind of like all quiet on the Western Front right now. I don't know. Will that maintain throughout the day? We'll see. I mean, after I got off yesterday, we had a couple little tidbits of things that I'll go over now, but um, not much happening at the moment. It seems like they may make us wait until tomorrow for the big action to start. A couple things at the top. Number one, first and foremost, a massive thank you. I don't know if he's actually going to listen to this, but I'll say it anyway. Massive thank you to Fred Katz of The Athletic for doing last night's live stream, live Q&A. It is as surreal as you, for those who've been watching me for a while and listening to me for a while and reading me for a while, it's as surreal as you probably would guess for, us at KFS and me in particular to have a legitimate, real deal, big time Knicks beat writer coming on to this channel and answering questions, like basically sitting in for me or sitting in for one of us. It's quite a trip. It's definitely a long way from, putting out blog posts on and spreading the word on Twitter in the hopes that 5 people might click on it. So yeah, it's cool, and it as I tweeted out last night, it's a testament to the fan base that Knicks Film School has grown to the point where someone like Fred Katz would think enough of what we do to want to come on and spend 2 hours of his Wednesday night when there's a whole bunch of shit going on, and he could be making phone calls and finding out different stuff going on before it happens. So shout out to him. I thought I'm actually not all the way through it because I was out last night and I've caught about half of it so far. I'm going to catch the other half after I get off here. But yeah, he was awesome. If you haven't caught that yet, some good tidbits for sure, some of which may come up today. So yeah, go check out last night's live stream from Fred Katz. And yes, Fred, I am indeed at the head of the most diabolical Ponzi scheme in the history of humanity. So good job by you pointing that out. That's number one. Number two, for anybody who may have missed it, I put it in the newsletter. It was kind of making the rounds yesterday on Twitter, but I think it actually was kind of maybe quieter than it should have been. Wayne Horse got on the old ones and twos with his Cleveland radio friends and said, seemingly in no uncertain terms, that the Cavs are not trading either Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. He was a little bit more forceful about the Garland piece of it than the Mitchell piece, but given Mitchell's reaction on Twitter, he kind of, left, not directly, but he was like, y'all are bored today. So I think we can put the Donovan Mitchell rumors to bed for the time being. I don't know if I would go so far as to say for this summer in its entirety, but for the time being, for sure. So that's number two. Let's go to the DiVincenzo stuff because I think that's probably the next most interesting. So Ian Begley, who's been on the DiVincenzo stuff for a while, as have several other reporters, dropped Ian Begley had a piece which I'll just quote him. So prominent members of the Knicks organization are in favor of pursuing DiVincenzo and that there is mutual interest. He also notes that they will face competition from several other teams, including Minnesota, Chicago, and Detroit. Interestingly enough, 2 of those 3 teams were in the news yesterday. Minnesota for non-guaranteeing, essentially waiving Taurean Prince because he was due $7.4 million. That move definitely raised my eyebrow, maybe even both eyebrows, because Taurean Prince is a good player, and he played really important minutes for that team last year. Some good team probably will snatch him up, and he'll play play good minutes for them too, I'm sure. He's not a great player. He's not a perfect player, but he was important for them. And $7.4 million is nothing, especially an expiring contract. So I don't, they didn't do that for no reason. Now, was this a cost-cutting thing? Because they're, but if it was a cost-cutting thing, that is more in line with something they should be worried about for next season. And so this strikes me as something that is relevant to their finances for this year. And that is a signal that they want to try to use their full non-taxpayer mid-level, which now that they've cut Prince, I think they're maybe waving one more small contract away from being able to use that and stay out of the tax, which they're not going to go into the tax. So definitely raise an eyebrow there. And then Chicago inked Nikola Vucevic to a 3-year, $60 million deal. I think I spitballed those numbers on here yesterday. Always made sense, something in that dollar figure years number. Listen, if you want to be in the Vooch business, it's as fair a number as you're going to get. Not sure I'd want to be in the Vooch business, but it is what it is. It makes it a little bit dicier for the Bulls to have access to their full non-tax player mid-level. They could certainly get there moving forward. They have some other money issues to worry about. There's a Lonzo Ball insurance, 50%. I don't know what the terminology is. They should get back half of what Ball makes. Now, I don't know how that necessarily works in terms of does that $10 million just not exist? Does it still count towards the cap? I don't think it does. So they should have access to. Ultimately, it's going to come down to what DiVincenzo wants to do. And this gets to the other part of Bagley's report, whether or not there is room for him to play here. And Fred touched on this last night. It was basically what I said yesterday. I'm not going to go over all the same shit again, but I'll just read what Ian reported. If they sign DiVincenzo, and again, this is per Ian Bagley, the Knicks may be looking to open up a rotation spot via trade. Evan Fournier's expiring contract has high value on the trade market. High value. Ian says nothing offhandedly. So the fact that he wrote high value on the trade market, I took to be notable. So perhaps Fournier could be paired with a rotation player or two to open up that spot for DiVincenzo. Now, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I continue to think that there is no world in which they bring in DiVincenzo and they do not send out a rotation player other than Obi Toppin, and maybe in addition to Obi Toppin, but it won't just be Obi Toppin. And this leads me to the other big news of the day. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll get to the questions, which is that, as has perhaps been rumored for a few days, ever since it came out that he was leaving Clutch, OG Anunoby going to CAA. And I could not help but laugh at the post that CAA basketball put out, where the biggest words on it are not OG Anunoby's name or anything else, or CAA basketball. Welcome to the, and then giant block letters, family. This is how CAA kind of markets itself. This is how they did business under Leon Rose. When you come to CAA, you are part of the family. If you want more information on this, it's a bit of a long read. I think it's 700 something pages. But Powerhouse is a fantastic oral history of CAA by was it James Andrew Miller. Obviously this history of CAA is all Mike Ovitz and a whole bunch of other people, but the basketball division under Leon Rose in particular, and now not under Leon Rose because he left, this is what they wanted to make it feel like. And I guess every agency does this to a certain extent, but CAA really drives it home. And since Leon Rose has come to the Knicks, that is how they have kind of gone about their business and how they want to present themselves to their players, to outsiders. This is a family here, and that's why I think like the mafia jokes write themselves, because it's like you're either in or you're out. And OG Anunoby being now with CAA, and there being two notable players on the Knicks who one could argue that they are the most natural trade candidates for a big trade. The fact that neither of them are CAA, one being RJ Barrett and the other being Emmanuel Quickley, I don't know. You could ignore that if you want. I'm certainly not ignoring it. We could sit here and we could spitball OG Anunoby trades. I came up with a crazy, admittedly insane one that essentially I think I ended up on like a 3-team situation with the Spurs and the Raptors, where maybe interestingly enough, the Spurs. So this is where I'll toss out some breadcrumbs and you guys could take it from there. But like, the Spurs have been linked to Evan Fournier. Why? Because they are incredibly far under the cap. They do need to meet the salary floor. You could make an argument that they would rather meet, because eventually, if you go through the free agent guys in this offseason, like, it stops making sense at a certain point, especially for a team like San Antonio, to sign some of these guys for the money that it would take to sign them for like multiple years. Also, San Antonio has a bunch of young players on their roster already that they want to give minutes to and they want to play. So the notion that they're going to rise to that salary floor by signing a bunch of free agents, like if a player is signing anywhere this summer, they're signing somewhere. I don't care who the player is. They're going to, unless it's maybe someone like Derrick Rose, who's maybe goes on with a ring chase. But even Derrick Rose, we've heard that he wants to go somewhere where he could play. All these guys are going to want to sign somewhere where they could play. And if you're a San Antonio, like it's like Houston, $60 million under the cap or whatever it is, guess what? They're going to go spend 40 of it on Fred VanVleet and probably 15 of it on Dillon Brooks. The Spurs are not in the market for those sorts of players. They're not going to go out and be a threat to sign like James Harden or Chris Middleton or Brook Lopez or something. Actually, I wonder if they would actually make a play for Brook Lopez. I don't think they would, because Brook Lopez is on the older side. I could see them being interested in bringing in a veteran center to play alongside Wemby, but I don't think it would be Lopez. The point is, you could see a scenario where, even in addition to the French connection between Fournier and Wemby, it makes some sense for the Spurs to take on Fournier's $18.9 million expiring salary. Does that mean they're going to pay a premium to do it? No, I don't think they're going to do that. But I think they might be the one team that would take it on happily at a low cost, if nothing else. So then there's that. And then if you connect it to the Toronto piece, San Antonio owns Toronto's draft pick, and it's protected out through the next several years. And it's not like a situation with like this Wizards pick. A lot of Knicks fans have bandied about the idea, well, the Wizards are going to want to get back their pick because otherwise they can't do business. The Wizards are going to suck for the foreseeable future. And the protections on that pick, I believe, never go lower than top 8. And like, that's even 3 years out. So if the Wizards turn it around to the point where they end up giving like the 10th or 11th or the 12th pick in the draft 3 years from now, because they're maybe ahead of schedule on their rebuild, they're probably going to be dancing in the streets. I'm not sure that they're nearly as worried about that as perhaps the Raptors are going to be, because now with Toronto going forward next year, if they lose VanVleet for nothing and they feel compelled to trade OG Anunoby, which is where this is obviously I'm going with this. Well, like, what's the guarantee that they're not going to be, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th worst team in the Eastern Conference? And like, that pick is top 6 protected. So obviously top 6 protected. If you jumped into the top 4 in the lottery, you're safe. But like, I don't think the Raptors are enamored with the idea of potentially losing like the 7th or 8th or 9th pick in the draft for where they're at, like, who knows? Maybe they would want to have that pick back. And I forget if I said it, but that pick went to San Antonio in the Pirtle trade. So maybe there's a deal there where, the Raptors get their pick back. Fournier ends up in San Antonio, and then obviously maybe RJ or Emmanuel Quickley or both of them are involved in that sort of trade with OG Anunoby coming back to the Knicks. And then in that scenario, especially because the Knicks would be sending a ton of money out, I would think that they would go to the front of the line for Donte DiVincenzo. And that's an interesting situation to me. That would be a very interesting situation to me. And the one thing that I didn't write in the newsletter today that I want to say, and then we'll go over to the comments, and this is something that for some reason I don't think it had ever crossed my mind until I was like, I was up at, I do this during free agency week. I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning and started thinking of fake trades. I'm very unwell. I've talked a lot about like OG Anunoby's fit with the starting five, and like I don't think he makes sense in between RJ Barrett and Julius Randle, which is why I think 1,000% if OG Anunoby is coming in some way, shape, or form, RJ Barrett would be going out. Putting that aside, the nice thing about having OG on your team is there's your backup four behind Julius Randle. And like I've talked a lot about over the course of this week about positional flexibility and how it's not only having positional flexibility is built into current NBA value as we enter these kind of new times under this new CBA, but like the right type of positional versatility where like OG Anunoby is like, he's not a guy like, okay, Harrison Barnes, a guy that's come up a lot. People are like, oh, sign Harrison Barnes or do sign and trade Harrison Barnes. Like Harrison Barnes is a 4. Could he give you some spot minutes at the 3? Probably. OG Anunoby is fine at the 3. He shoots it well enough. He moves well enough defensively. He could be a 3 all day long, while also being perfectly comfortable sliding down to the 4. So now if you bring him in, you're talking about a guy who is going to give you whatever, 20, 22, 24 minutes at the 3. And then he's going to give you another however many minutes Julius Randle doesn't play as a backup 4. Again, if they are able to, and I have no idea if they're going to even make a real play for OG Anunoby, but like, I think that positional flexibility is an added benefit of bringing him in. You want to talk about some fun bench lineups to imagine. How about OG at the 4, Josh Hart at the 3, Quentin Grimes at the 2, and how about Deuce McBride at the 1? Try scoring on that team. Deuce, Grimes, Hart, OG, pick a center. That good, but that would not be pleasant. So yeah, I think it makes sense to me. It's all about the cost and all about what Toronto wants back, what they're prioritizing, who they might like on the Knicks roster, who they might not like on the Knicks roster, all those sorts of things. I think the Knicks will be in on OG, but we'll see. I think that's it. I don't have anything else off the top of my head. I'm sure some stuff will come up as we. I'm trying to think if there's any player option or team option news worth noting. Houston declined. Not Houston. Forgot to get traded to LA. Clippers declined Eric Gordon's team option. I thought that was notable. I think if the Knicks do go the route where they have a need to bring in a rotation player on the mid-level exception, and they miss on DiVincenzo and they miss on Bruce Brown, which it sounds like they are going to miss on Bruce Brown because Jamal Murray had an interview a few days ago in which he basically said that they're going to extend him. I could see Eric Gordon being a guy that they might want to target again if they miss out on their top targets and if they have a need for that rotation piece. And again, maybe what last thing, sign of the changing economic times. Wasn't long ago that I think the entire league just assumed Jordan Clarkson was going to opt out of his $14 million player option, and he picked up that option just a little while, like a few minutes before we came on here, which I found it interesting that there was a report that I forget the report. It was a report basically quoting a league executive who was kind of just like spitballing that they thought Emmanuel Quickley would want $25 million a year. Not saying Jordan Clarkson's better than Emmanuel Quickley. You could have an argument as to which of those. I think it's probably a little bit team dependent as to which of those guys you would want on your team like next year. But Jordan Clarkson's that dude's a fucking bucket getter, and not like your old school Jamal Crawford. You know, yeah, he'll score 20, but his effective field goal percentage at the end of the day is like 43.5. Not like that. Like Jordan Clarkson has been efficiently getting buckets, like high value buckets, tough buckets for years now. And he's like, he's won the 6th Man of the Year award already. He's still really good, and he's not that old. Like the fact that he's picking up a $14 million player option, it's interesting to me. That's all. All right. Now we're going to move on to the questions, whatever else you guys want to talk about. You should notice I got another Mets cup today. Busy. What's going on, Busy? How you doing, man? Hey, Macri and KFS crew. Oh, shout out APJP is producing today. Hope you guys are enjoying your summer. So far, so good. No complaints. Probably could use a little bit more rest, but so far, so good. Is it true that Mrs. Mariah Mills has your name tattooed on one cheek and Zion on the other? If so, how is that going over in the Macri house? Trying to think if my wife how my wife would feel if she knew another woman had my name tattooed somewhere on her personage. I think depending on the circumstances, obviously, I think generally she'd be honored. But I don't know that for a sec. Now I don't know Miss Mills. But I don't know. I have my wife's name tattooed on my personage, which was a present to her way back in the day. So like this is not an unfamiliar topic in the Macri household, getting one's name tattooed. But yeah, I don't know. I think my wife would rather another woman get my name tattooed on her body than like me get a basketball player's name tattooed on my body. I'll say that. I know that wasn't your question, but thanks, Busy. Hope you're doing well. Hope your summer's been good too and relaxing and all the things. Dylan Chop Charles, what's going on, Dylan Chop Charles? Good to hear from you. Yeah, what's up? What's good, J-Mac? Been a while. Is there so much hype around Donte because the front office may be willing to give up IQ and they are preparing to fill that role? Because other than that, I don't see it. I'm just reading the tea leaves here. And like I've talked about them a lot, but I'll kind of just, to me, okay, so it's been reported that the Knicks are in on Donte DiVincenzo. I just read what Ian Begley talked about. Now, Ian Begley, I want to be very clear, did not write like the Knicks are planning on clearing up the rotation. The Knicks feel like they have a rotation glut if they bring on Donte DiVincenzo. All he said was the Knicks may be looking to open a rotation spot by a trade. Fred Katz got on here last night and went through how Donte DiVincenzo is not coming here, and the Knicks are not paying him $10 or $12 million a year to come here and play Obi Toppin's minutes, 12 or 14 or 15 minutes a game. So I have the only thing that I could deduce is that the Knicks are going to clear a rotation spot. Now, you ask, is it Emmanuel Quickley? Here's what I don't think it's Quentin Grimes. I think they love Quentin Grimes. I think Tibbs in particular loves Quentin Grimes. And I think the reason Tibbs loves Quentin Grimes is because he knows that Quentin Grimes, no matter what the Knicks do with this roster, no matter what trade they make, no matter anything, there's going to be a path for Quentin Grimes to play 25 minutes a night of like in any situation, regular season, first round playoffs, conference finals playoffs, because that dude, again, and Katz has talked about this all year, he is as plug and play as any single player on the Knicks roster. You have to respect his jump shot. He's a good defender. So I don't think they have any, and plus he's an additional year away from getting paid. And I also think they just like him. I think they believe in his upside. I think they love his work ethic. I know they love his work ethic. That's not something I should make it like I'm reporting that. Like, the dude works his ass off. He was in the gym more than anyone this year. So I don't think it's Grimes. They're planning on re-signing Hart. They're not trading Jalen Brunson. They're not trading Julius Randle. I shouldn't say that. Look, who knows? Maybe they trade Julius Randle. I don't see it. And Fred got on here last night, and he said he would be very surprised if they traded Julius Randle. So who does that leave? It leaves RJ Barrett and Manuel Quickley. Now, of those two, given their roster and given their roster needs, I think it makes a lot more sense to trade RJ Barrett. Why? RJ Barrett is the worst defender of the two. RJ Barrett is the worst shooter of the two. RJ Barrett's value is with the ball in his hands, whereas Emmanuel Quickley offers more value without the ball. So it makes a lot more sense for them to trade RJ Barrett than Emmanuel Quickley, in my eyes, to me. And maybe that's what they wind up doing. I guess my pushback there is, if you're trading RJ, are you doing an RJ trade where you don't get back a rotation player, like a big time rotation player? Because if you're trading RJ and you don't get back and you are getting back a big time rotation player, then you haven't cleared up the rotation minutes. So it's like, all right, where's the RJ trade where you're trading RJ for like a pick? I don't see that trade out there. Especially at his salary, because if you're trading that's the big difference. If you're trading RJ, you're trading a $25 million player. If you're trading Emmanuel Quickley, you're trading a $4 million a year right now, a $4 million player. It's a hell of a lot easier to trade the cheap player and get back a pick than trade a $25 million player and get back a player who doesn't need big rotation minutes, and you're also getting picked. So I just think that the reason I think it might be Quickley is I think Quickley opens up the avenue for more trades. That said, my supposition all along is that there is a world where they trade both. And again, I say this not from a place of knowledge. I just say it. I'm just trying to do the math. Now, obviously, the value has to be there. Where's the value? And then that just gets us back to OG Anunoby. But we'll see. Thanks, Dylan Chap Charles. As soon as I sent the super chat, you pretty much answered my question. But I never got to thank you all for all the content last season. Thank you, guys. Thank you. You always were a good contributor, and you always brought some good stuff to the table. So appreciate you, man. TK, if Donte does go elsewhere, Eric Gordon pivot. Yeah, talked about that already. So here's the thing about Eric Gordon and specifically the mid-level exception. The mid-level, I believe the mid-level has to be for at least 3 years. The non-taxpayer mid-level. It's a terrible job by me that I don't know this off the top of my head. I think you could do 2 years with the third year being a team option. Either way, Eric Gordon is, look up right now. Eric Gordon is 34 years old. So he will turn, he's a Christmas baby. I didn't know that. So he'll turn 35 on Christmas. So if you just say you can sign Eric Gordon to a 2+1, which I think you can, you're getting him for his age 34, but mostly 35 season, and then his age 35, but mostly age 36 season. Is that a guy they feel comfortable giving multiple years to? Now, if the money is low enough, they'd feel comfortable. But like, I don't know. What's Eric Gordon's market at this point? We know the Knicks have been interested in him in the past. He's definitely a Tibbs guy. Tibbs likes guards that do some of the sorts of things that he's able to do. He's big body. He still knows how to defend. Yeah, I could see them going that route. Depending on the number, I could see them going that route, but not at the full mid level. I frankly would be surprised if he got the full mid level. Good question, TK. Ben, what's going on, Ben? Morning, John. Lovely day in the Pacific Northwest. Hope New York is the same. It's sun's still shining, so that's good. Which teams are going to be the most focused on making a mid-season A roster changing trade or B cap tweak deal? I'm guessing we are in the A. I don't know if there's more to this comment. If there is, feel free to put it up, Justin. But which teams are going to be the most focused on making mid-season roster-changing trade? That's tough to forecast. So far in advance, but let me give it a shot. Like, to me, like sometimes this question is easier to answer than at other times. Like you would like, okay, Phoenix, obviously, because Phoenix, as far as I know, or as far as has been reported, the mentality there is to basically sign all of these middling, impending free agents that they have to numbers that are like maybe above market value, but that will allow Phoenix to bring back players making the same amount of money. Because Phoenix will, because of where they are with the tax and the apron and the whole thing, they won't be able to bring back players making more than the players they're sending out. Phoenix is an obvious one. I don't know that I see the Knicks being a team. I mean, they've altered their roster a little bit every season. Although, they've altered their roster a little bit every season. They've altered their. I mean, they brought in Derrick Rose in year 1. Year 2, maybe they didn't do anything year 2. Unless I'm forgetting something. I mean, they sent Kemba home, and then year 3 they brought in Josh Hart. That's tough to forecast though right now. I mean. So let's say they don't trade RJ this summer. I would say that RJ would be a natural candidate to go out in an in-season trade. But again, it's tough to forecast like what that trade would be. Because it was like last season, like they talked about the Cam Reddish trade. They did bring in Cam Reddish. I forgot. It's funny. I remember the trade that sent Cam Reddish out. I forgot the trade that brought Cam Reddish in. Like last season with Quickly, there were Quickly trade rumors, and then the Knicks started playing well, and Quickly was an important part of them playing well. So then they didn't want to trade him. Katz kind of alluded to that on the live stream last night. So like if they're playing good ball this season, now if they're not playing good ball this season, that'll certainly incentivize them to make a trade. I don't know. Depends who's available. Tough question to answer right now. Appreciate where your mind's at, though. Juanon, what's going on, Juanon? What do you think 30's value is around the league? Referring, of course, to Julius Randle. Best possible haul we could get for him. This is in the hypothetical world where it wouldn't take a Booker or Embiid for Leon to move him. So, like, I caught a little bit of, and again, another shout out to the Substack chat. On fire today, as always. I, again, neglected my duties and have not started a Thursday thread yet. I'll start that after this is over. Where, maybe Leon is saving his bullets for Embiid or Booker. That may be the case. I know this isn't your question, but I'll get back to your question. But I don't think that precludes them from making a significant move like an OG Anunoby trade this summer, because you could just turn around and flip OG Anunoby for Booker or Embiid if he becomes available. I think OG Anunoby's the type of guy that's going to have value. That's a great part about trading for a guy like that. That dude's like a kind of like a supersized version of Grimes. Drop him onto any team in the league. That dude's going to get 30 minutes and play an important role. So you know that there's going to be value there. It's trickier with Julius. Obviously, he's kind of a quirkier fit in that he certainly can't play down a position. He can't play at 3. And I think there's a lot more coaches out there that would look at the situation like Tibbs does than we think. In which like they're not gonna play him as a small ball 5. Now, are there some teams that would do it? Absolutely. And I think there is some I mean, and Benji's been all over this for as long as I can remember about like with Julius, death is inertia. Like you want that guy moving on defense. You want him active on defense. So the notion of putting him in a literally switch everything defense. But how many teams actually run a switch everything defense that would be interested in trading for Julius Randle? This is what complicates his theoretical trade value. Like, could you argue the Clippers would take him for Paul George? Like, putting aside whether the Knicks would actually do that, and like, who's asking for the picks there? I imagine both teams might be asking for the picks in that one because you know what Julius Randle does? Julius Randle plays basketball games. Paul George does not necessarily. But like the Clippers run that kind of a defense. But like in a vacuum, it's such a tough question to answer. I don't, because the way that star trades work, and Julius Randle is a star, low-level star, but he's a star. I mean, he's a 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA guy. Like, it's about, okay, I'll give you the trade. I wonder if it wouldn't be something like the Bradley Beal return, which again, the Knicks are not going to do that because the Wizards are starting over and the Knicks are not anywhere near starting over. The Knicks are, I think, fancy themselves as just getting started. So if it's a trade, so then that pivots us to like, okay, then it has to be a win now trade. And then you get back to the same place we've been. And Ian and others have reported this all summer long. Knicks ain't trading Julius Randle unless they're getting a definitively better player back in return and they're adding other stuff to the trade. That's why that sort of trade makes the most sense when you're talking about trading Julius Randle. It's such a difficult question to answer. And I guess the last thing I'll say on it is the fact that it is so tough to answer and the reason why it is so tough to answer, which is that Julius Randle is the opposite of an OG Anunoby, who is, you know, a plug and play fit on any team in the league. And I'm just throwing out OG Anunoby, but you could name several other stars, you know, and because he is just such a unique, like, he's strictly a 4. He doesn't really defend very well, or he defends well in like certain circumstances sometimes. And the shot is like an iffy proposition. And teams aren't really going to guard him from 3 in the playoffs. You know, and his best value is when he has the ball. It's like you add it all up, and it's just that in and of itself is kind of damning on his trade value. You know, again, which is not to say he doesn't have any. It's just tough for me to sit here and say what it is. Thanks, Juno. Sebastian Hurley. What's going on, Sebastian? Hey, John, huge fan of KFS. Thank you, man. Appreciate you coming aboard and the generous contribution. I run an anime podcast. That's awesome. And I have used the term fair and reasonable too often not to pay homage. Keep up the great work. That's awesome that you have an anime podcast. Anime is one of those things that, like, every time I see like an anime like book on a bookshelf or in like my library or, you know, at school or something, I'm like, man, I wish I was into anime. I wish I had time to get into anime. And I feel like it's such a dedication that there are other things that are like slightly higher on my list, but like, it seems like a cool thing to be into. And I certainly wouldn't mind if either of my daughters or both of my daughters got into it. So that's really cool. Thanks for chiming in, man. And good luck with the pod. Hamdi, what's going on, Hamdi? Hamdi M. Hey, John, hope all is well. Thanks for all the great content. It's our pleasure. Thanks for contributing and making it easier for us to do this stuff. Pissed I missed Frederick last night. Just waiting and hoping for the smart move. I still can't believe how the NBA offseason has become so interesting. I love it. I think this is great theater, and it's never without surprises. That's the best part. It's never without surprises. Even before, like something as small as like the Jordan Clarkson picking up his option, like that's a surprise, and that's a cool surprise. That's really fun. As far as waiting and hoping for the smart move, here I'll make a prediction. It's not a ballsy prediction, but it is a prediction. I think they will make a move. I think it will be a significant move. And I think it will be a move that, again, because I've said it. I can't dance around it. I've said it. And because it will be a move that will send out a beloved player, whether it's Emmanuel Quickley or RJ Barrett, it will be a move that will upset a lot of people. But I think even the people, the certain people you're never going to talk sense into, but I think the reasonable folks, even those of them that will be upset by the move, and again, this is not, to be very clear, it's not based on a single anything that I've heard. I've heard nothing. Like, and if I have heard stuff, I don't believe it. So, like, this is just based on me just guesstimating. That's all. Just guesstimating. I think even the reason the people who maybe are upset that the player is going out and think that Knicks are maybe making a mistake because they think said player has like an untapped upside or whatever else, I think it will be a move that even the critics of the move will understand the logic of, appreciate the logic of, and appreciate the thinking behind it and the upside potential that the move has, and how it fits into the Knicks' long-term team building, which is basically a very long-winded way of saying I don't think they're going to go out there and do a Bargnani trade or something of that nature, where you're going to look at the trade and be like, man, the Knicks are freaking idiots for doing that. I don't see them doing something like that. I just don't. I would actually be floored. That would be the thing that would floor me the most, is if the Knicks made a trade that, like, objectively on its face just seems like a bad trade. Even if certain Knicks fans may think it will be a bad trade. That's my prediction. I could be dead wrong. I probably will be dead wrong, because usually, you know what happens? Nothing. Nothing is the usual outcome. When we predict all kinds of crazy stuff, the outcome's usually not that. Thanks, Andy. To be honest, Rich, sorry if you covered thoughts on KJ Martin and the Knicks. I have not covered it. This is interesting. What? What is this even? NBA star Kyrie Irving intends to meet with the Phoenix Suns when the free agency period begins on June 30th, league sources tell NBA on TNT. Okay, so he's going to force the Mavs into a sign and trade involving DeAndre Ayton. I mean, the Mavs almost, if you believe the reporting from Mark Stein, and I absolutely do, that the Mavs were close to trading for DeAndre Ayton on draft night. So maybe it's not that crazy to imagine, but they were almost close to trading DeAndre Ayton on draft night and giving up Tim Hardaway Jr. and Richaun Holmes, not Kyrie Irving, who 6 months ago they gave up an unprotected future first round pick. That's interesting. KJ Martin. Okay. You would think by now that I would have all of the CAA clients memorized. Bad job by me that I don't. So but that being said, I do have a picture handy that will refresh my recollection. KJ Martin. Yeah. Okay. Austin Brown. So he's CAA. So right there's a potential opportunity there. I mean, is KJ Martin someone that I think would come in and get rotation minutes right away for the Knicks based on his play thus far? No. In terms of like, could he take the Obi Toppin role? I'm not sure I see that either because he's 6'6". He's 215 pounds. If we don't think that they're going to go with like a small ball backup for like a Josh Hart or an RJ Barrett as the backup for, do we think they would go with KJ Martin? Maybe they would. The trouble I see here is that would eat, unless they're going to use the biannual, which they could use the biannual. The biannual is for, was it for 5 million, 5.5, something like that? They could use the biannual and use the non-taxpayer mid-level, but if they do that, then that will put them into the tax unless they move Obi. So there would be a corresponding Obi trade. I don't know. It's a lot of moving parts. I don't hate it. Like, KJ Martin's a good energy guy. That dude plays defense. The one drawback is, unless I'm mistaken, and I don't think I am, he doesn't shoot it. I'm going to look really bad if I go now look up his stats and he's like a 43% 3-point shooter. No, he shot 31% from 3 last season on not great volume. Now, the 2 years before that, he shot a respectable percentage. He was around league average both of those years. Again, only 2 attempts a game. I don't know. I don't know if I see I wouldn't rule it out, though. I wouldn't rule it out. There's a family connection there. His dad obviously played for the Knicks at the end of his career. Good athlete. I think they'd like that. I think they'd like the defense. Hell of a dunker, much like Obi. So it'd be an interesting Obi replacement. I'll say that. He's a better defender than Obi, but a worse shooter. I wonder if that's a trade-off that they would make. I could see it. Good question. Ben with another one. Thanks for taking on my essay question earlier. It's the least I could do. Not enough coffee yet for me to ask coherently. We'll revisit it when we see rosters post-deadline. Trust me, I'm going to do a full newsletter of, like, once the dust settles, here are the things I'm looking out for moving forward and how they could potentially impact the Knicks. Sure enough. Oh, it's Matt in the Substack chat just said Kyrie to Phoenix and we get Luka. Man, if Kyrie forced his way out of Dallas to Phoenix, of all places, to go play with Kevin Durant, imagine how Luka would feel showing up to camp and he's looking around and he sees DeAndre Ayton, Josh Green, who's the next best player on that team? Tim Hardaway Jr.? Man, it's rough times in Big D, perhaps, and I'm freaking loving it. Thanks, Ben. As always, appreciate you. This is interesting. The Houston Rockets are emerging as a strong landing spot for Kyle Kuzma. That would seem, and this is from Chris Haynes, to contradict the Mark Stein's reporting, and which is weird because Chris Haynes and Mark Stein are like, they have a podcast together, but that the league looks at Houston as a lock to land Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, because if they land VanVleet on the numbers that we're talking about with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, they don't have money left over for Kyle Kuzma. So then you're talking about a sign and trade involving one of those players, but like the Rockets don't really have any salaries to put into a sign and trade. Like it's all rookie salaries. Unless I'll go and check this, but I don't think I'm speaking out of turn on that. Anyway, Justin, you could put the next chat or question up. Dirty Dancer. I know he stinks at defense, but I kind of like Trey Lyles in lieu of Donte DiVincenzo, brings shooting and doesn't need as many minutes. The reports are that Trey Lyles will be back in Sacramento. I've mentioned Trey Lyles a few times. here's the problem. He's with Clutch. I know he went to Kentucky, but he's with Clutch. And the defense is an issue. The shooting is a big plus. Again, like if you're talking in a vacuum and the Knicks don't make any other moves, would Trey Lyles theoretically make more sense than Donte DiVincenzo because he's a better shooting version of Obi Toppin? Yeah, maybe. I feel like we would have heard some Trey Lyles noise by now if that was a realistic thing. Back to Houston for a second. I forgot this. They do have the Kevin Porter Jr. contract, which is, if I recall the details from when he extended to this contract a year ago, I think only the first year of this extension, which starts this upcoming season at $15.8 million, I believe, even though it's a 4-year deal, I believe only the first year of it is fully guaranteed. So Kevin Porter Jr. is an outgoing salary. Could be interesting in a sign and trade scenario. Now, does Toronto want to do a sign and trade involving Kevin Porter Jr.? I'm not sure I see Kevin Porter Jr. being wanted by the Raptors. Not sure I see him being wanted by the Grizzlies. Especially like you're going to replace Dylan Brooks with Kevin Porter Jr. And then who would be the other team? Oh, the Wizards. The Wizards already have 8,000 point guards that they're trying to get rid of. Now you're going to bring in another one. It's going to be Kevin Porter Jr. My Lord, the hilarity of watching a backcourt of Kevin Porter Jr. and Jordan Poole. I don't think that there are enough shots in an NBA basketball game for just those two guys. So I don't know how they're getting Van Vliet and Brooks and Kuzma unless maybe they're not getting one of those guys. Which then sets up the next question of like, if Houston isn't a Kuzma place, does Sacramento get Kuzma? Is he going there? You know, and is there a sign and trade to be worked out? Who knows? Maybe the Wizards would take on Kevin Porter Jr. What the hell do I know? Okay, let's keep going. Drew P. Would IQ and RJ for OG would kill our offense? I don't know. I frankly disagree with that a great deal. OG Anunoby is he's a better offensive player than either of those two guys. He's also a better defensive player than either of those two guys. Like RJ has, we've talked about this up and down. I'll try to be brief because I've talked about it before and I don't want to repeat myself for anybody who's listened to all of these or other pods or whatever. RJ Barrett's best skill is driving. He gets into the lane with the best of them. That is a distinctly on-ball skill. It is a skill that is with the ball. RJ Barrett is, as the roster is currently constructed, or at any time in the future, even if they flip Julius Randle for some player better than Julius Randle, RJ Barrett will never be more than third fiddle on this team. Third fiddles on any NBA offense in the league need to have at least as much, if not usually more, off-ball equity in terms of what they bring to an offense than on-ball equity. We have 4 years of evidence that RJ Barrett is just not a good NBA shooter. He shot 31% or 32% or whatever miserable number it was from three last year. Teams are never going to guard him out there. So unless something materially changes, and oh, by the way, when he drives until the playoffs, he also wasn't really good at passing on those drives. Now in the playoffs, he became more of a playmaker on the drives, and that was a revelation. Newsflash, Julius Randle's been doing a really good job at that for a while. We remember the bad with Julius Randle a lot more than we remember the bad with RJ. But like there was a chart going around from NBA University like a few days ago or last week or something talking about how or showing how Julius Randle was one of the best players in terms of passing, like gravity, bringing the double team, and then passing out of the double team effectively. He's great at that. The Knicks just don't hit a lot of shots because they're not a good shooting team, which leads me back to OG Anunoby, who is a career 37, 38 per career three-point shooter. And he could do some stuff with the ball. So, and then, you know, you want, it wouldn't be Quickly and RJ just for OG. It would be Quickly and RJ for OG, and then they'd sign DiVincenzo, who is also a really good fit in this offense because he, again, holds a lot of off-ball equity. He is a really good shooter, and he's gotten better every year. Also a really good cutter. And I went back and I watched not a lot. I watched enough film to feel comfortable talking about Donte DiVincenzo, and specifically film from the playoffs. Put that dude on the same court as Hartenstein and Josh Hart. Now you got a chance of replicating the Clippers offense from 2 years ago in terms of the role that Hartenstein played, really doing some damage from the high post. If you got DiVincenzo and Hart running around back there. And who knows, maybe Deuce gets some minutes with those guys. Like, again, not something we really have seen a lot, but depending on what roster machinations there are, maybe we see something like that. A lot of interesting things they could do with DiVincenzo. So I respectfully disagree with that comment. Dylan Kitts. I think the report of IQ wanting 9 figures coming out recently is not an accident. These reports never are. The real question is, do we think IQ is twice as good as Donte DiVincenzo? Dylan, I'm really happy you phrased it that way, because some will look at that and be like, that's a wild oversimplification. And I actually think, in a roundabout way, once you go through all the machinations of, and God knows I've talked about it enough on these live streams all week, of like all of the different, I feel like the guy in the, what is it? It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's the meme where the guy has all the shit on the wall. I feel like that guy when I talk about this stuff. Like, when you think about every possible move and every possible offshoot of every possible move, and at the end of the day, that kind of, it sort of does come down to that. Now, there are people out there, including someone that I podcast with occasionally. I hope to podcast with more. XJ, part of our team here at Knicks Film School, who thinks Immanuel Quickley, even at $25 million a year, would be a bargain. It's not just him. There are other people who think that. And there was again, speaking of things on the internet, there was a chart recently about basically most bang for your buck. Immanuel Quickley was the best bang for your buck player in the entire league by that metric. I think part of my difficulty there, and I'm not saying that there isn't a world where Immanuel Quickley is worth $25 million in the NBA. I think that world exists. I'm not sure it exists on the Knicks, because you're then in 2 years, once Brunson extends, paying almost half your salary cap, and it will be literally half your salary cap if Brunson actually, no, sorry, he's not eligible for Supermax because the Knicks didn't draft him. Whatever. You'd be paying almost half your salary cap, $70 million for 2 small guards, only one of which starts. And here's the big one. Because Immanuel Quickley's biggest value is in his off-ball defense and not his on-ball defense, and because teams in the playoffs, when they are hunting, and that's what teams do in the playoffs, they just hunt. You already got one guy they're going to hunt, in Brunson. If you have a second small guard, for as great as he is as an off-ball defender, we saw Immanuel Quickley get bullied and taken to the post in the playoffs this year. And I'm not talking about by Jimmy Butler, by Kyle Lowry. So if you don't think teams would have it on number one on their whiteboard when Quickley and Brunson are in the game, we are it's matchup hunt every possession between one of those two guys. I think it limits you to, you're not going to see, and I don't care if it's Tibbs or some other coach, it's not going to matter. I don't think you're going to see any coach put those guys on the floor together in a big playoff game for more than 10 minutes. I just don't see it. And then if you got Jalen Brunson playing, literally every minute of a playoff game like we saw, but more realistically, 40 minutes or something per game, well, then all of a sudden, your $25 million a year guard is seeing 16, 17, 18 minutes in the biggest games of your season. That's not worth $25 million. I don't care what he does in those minutes. And then that gets into what's Immanuel Quickley's ceiling? Does he have more off-ball creation upside, and all those sorts of things? On other teams, I think if he's a starting point guard and they don't have to accommodate his fit with another small guard, I think he can absolutely be worth that amount of money. So then it comes down to, maximizing your assets and like, is there a trade to make and what's the trade and when do you make the trade and so on and so forth and all the bullshit we've been talking about on here. The last thing I want to say about the quickly valuation thing is I think a lot of that valuation for people who do have him extraordinarily highly valued comes from the on-off numbers. And I cannot help but point out that the reason the on-off stuff is so good for Quickly is because a lot of the times the guy he's replacing is RJ. And I've done the work. I feel very, I've put it in a lot of newsletters. The team is just worse when RJ is on the floor. And the numbers with RJ versus the numbers without RJ, almost irrespective of who you put in there in his place, are better, which gets us back to the thing I was talking about a minute ago, which is that RJ just is not a great fit with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, or certainly not with Julius Randle and another guy who needs the ball. So, like, would those on-off numbers or would his impact metrics, Quickly's impact metrics, be as positive if it wasn't RJ in the Knicks starting lineup, but like a more traditional 3-and-D wing? And then what would that do to Immanuel Quickly's perceived value? I don't know. I think these are all interesting questions, though. And yeah, we'll see. Thanks, Dylan. Okay, here we go. This is a contrary opinion, I think. David Hughes. I've always loved the idea of Immanuel Quickly next to Brunson. I think them together would be scary. Why do you think Tibbs won't give IQ the chance? Because I think it's a traditionalist view, but I also don't think it's a minority view. It's two small guards. And I think he would make that concession if the second small guard was a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who on any given night is capable of being the best offensive player in the game, if not the entire sport. He's that good. Immanuel Quickly has not shown that level of offensive upside where you are willing to jump through the necessary hoops to accommodate. Now, it should go without saying, Immanuel Quickly is a better defender than Donovan Mitchell. 1,000%. But he's still a small guard, and he could still be bullied. And I think Tibbs's mentality is, and he's said this, I don't think it, I'm literally quoting him, maybe not in exact words, but I'm quoting him. You prepare your entire year, training camp, regular season, and then once you get into the playoffs, it is to prepare for your high-level playoff series. And you prepare by becoming expert in those things during the regular season. And I think he just sees, if long-term in the highest level playoff games, I'm not going to start Immanuel Quickly and Jalen Brunson, well, then why would I do it in the regular season? And I don't necessarily think he's wrong. Now, and shout out to my buddy Jeff over at the Strickland, because we were texting about this recently. That's not to say Quickly and Brunson isn't the best starting backcourt combo for this team as currently constituted. I think it is. And I think the team is 1,000% better with Brunson and Quickly, and then either Grimes or Hart at the three. And then, Julius and Mitch, than it is with RJ. 100%. But that's as the team is currently constituted. I think there's going to be some changes. Thanks, David. Jeremy Franco, thanks for the contribution. I don't know if there was a comment associated with that. Okay, let's get one more. Do one more question. Justin's telling me there's no more super chats, but let's let's get one more question that's about anything. I don't really care what it is. Jason M, here we go. If Fred VanVleet leaves Toronto, Fred VanVleet, I always screw that up, then RJ and IQ for OG makes sense for both teams. IQ could replace Fred VanVleet as the starting point guard. Jason, you're preaching to the choir. I don't know that the Knicks would give that much up for OG Anunoby. Or at the very least, I think that they would maybe want a little something else back somehow. Maybe that's offloading Fournier. Maybe that's getting a small draft asset. Maybe they want Chris Boucher to be their backup 4. Maybe they want Thad Young to be their backup 4. But again, I just talked about if you have OG, you don't really need a backup 4 because he's your backup 4. I don't know, man. It makes a lot of sense in my mind for both teams to some extent. Again, I don't know that I love the fit with RJ and Barnes and Siakam. We'll see. So that's good. That's a good one to end it on. Oh, last thing. Oh, there we go. Jeremy Franco. Okay. Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ to the Clippers. Paul George to the Knicks. Evan Fournier to San Antonio. Powell to Philadelphia? Hold on. I'm missing something here because I see. What is Philadelphia giving up? Because the Sixers can't just inherit Norm Powell. They have to send out salary. So, yeah, that's Jeremy. Unfortunately, that one's not going to work. Also, that's a hell of a lot of moving parts. So that's going to be a no for me, dog. Is that it? Oh, yeah, I wanted to give a Clee Torres update. I definitely spent a lot of time. This is for the person that asked what I thought of the undrafted prospect out of LSU, Clee Torres. Spent a lot of time looking for Clee Torres. Got the old flashlight out and couldn't find I was in the dark. I was just lost. So I'll keep looking though. For that. And hopefully I come across him at some point in the not too distant future. And that lives up to all of our wildest dreams. And on that note, we'll end things. Thanks everybody for watching. We got the Casuals live show tonight. Don't forget to check them out again live on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel. Also, obviously, if you're watching us and you're not subscribed, subscribe, please. Like the video. I think there's a way that you could I learned this the other day. I was doing a little digging on YouTube. I think there's a way you could set a notification for when someone on YouTube goes live. So you should do that if you could do that for us. Because that's fun. And check out the Casuals tonight. I'm being told by Justin one more super chat just came in. I hope it's about Clee Torres. No, it's not. Sam L. If even one of RJ, IQ, Grimes, or Deuce hit their 90th percentile outcome in a Knick uniform, we are cooking. That's a loaded comment. I'll just read it and I'll leave it right there. I'm really excited to see Quentin Grimes in a Knick uniform this year. I think Quentin Grimes is going to make a leap. I think it's coming. I think some of us thought it would come in the playoffs. It didn't. I think there's a Quentin Grimes leap coming. I could see. I think it's going to be tough for RJ and Quickley to reach their 90th percentile outcomes here, which is what makes it tough. But Deuce, I don't even know what Deuce's 90th percentile outcome. I don't really know. Patrick Beverley? That dude's pretty good. Better? I don't know. But I like Deuce McBride. I'm excited. I hope Deuce McBride I hope they run a 9.5 man rotation this year and Deuce is the 0.5. That would be fun. Or maybe even an 8.5 man rotation and Deuce is the 0.5. I can see a world where that happens. For sure. Maybe he wouldn't even be the 0.5. Maybe he'd be the ninth man. I think there is a world where that happens. All right, enough conjecture. Oh yeah, Jeremy Franco. JH was Harden, not Hart. My bad. Oh goodness gracious. Yeah, I'm sorry. Too many moving parts. I don't see that being a thing that happens. Although I know there was a Harden Clippers thing. I mean, just to take the thing on its face, though, if Harden is meeting with the Clippers and the Clippers are like, and he wants to go to the Clippers and the Clippers want him, if it's a sign and trade for a number that Harden could live with, Norm Powell would not be enough by way of incoming salary. So the Sixers would have to take another salary from Philly, from the Clippers, which would be Clippers would try to send them Marcus Morris. They wouldn't want Marcus Morris. Maybe they would do. I mean, would they do if Harden was like, I'm piecing, I could either piece to Houston or you get shit, or I could piece out to the Clippers and you could get something. Does that force Philly's hand? Would they take Norm Powell and like Luke Kennard in that scenario? It's not crazy. Sure, they'd want Terrence Mann. Clippers don't want to give up Terrence Mann. And we're getting Paul George out of all this. And what else is going to? And I think you had, yeah, the money didn't work out in the trade that you mentioned because I think you had. So then you had Harden and RJ and Quickly going to the Clippers. That's not a thing that could happen. Again, because Harden would just not sign for that little amount of money. Maybe Quickly though, going to LA. But then if LA is getting Harden, what do they need Quickly for? And then what happens with and RJ, the money doesn't work with RJ, so then you gotta send RJ somewhere or keep RJ. Like that doesn't work either. I don't know. Maybe you got something there though, but I think it's more. I don't know. I think you just leave all the other teams out of it, and I think you do a straight Houston or Clippers Philly thing. Interesting thought though. Okay, now we're done. Thanks for tuning in. Check out the Casuals live tonight. And then see you tomorrow. Me and Jeremy live at 5. Take care. Have a good day.